guys, welcome to Home Charm. My name is Kaylee. If you've been following me, you know that I do a lot of furniture flipping. I also make some clay ornaments and things during the winter. Um, I only have two videos up so far, which are both furniture flips, but I'm hoping to get a little bit more of a variety up of more DIY stuff eventually. Today's video is a little bit different. Today I'm going to talk about homeschool. This is just because I get asked a lot, like, so how do you teach, or what do you do in your homeschool? Like, what do you teach your kids? And so this is kind of both for people who are homeschooling and people who aren't. Like, if you're homeschooling, maybe this can give you an idea of something you can do, or kind of help you structure out your planning. If you don't homeschool and you're thinking, like, this woman is not qualified to be teaching, maybe this video will give you some relief. Like, okay, she maybe has an idea of what she's doing. Or if it doesn't, you can do what you will with this video, you know? Tuck it away and don't watch my homeschool videos. Feel free, though. Comment if you have any suggestions or anything. But so today this is really just like a loose, generalized what we do, or how I structure out our homeschool. I guess it's like kind of our structure. So before the school year starts, I come up with I get all of the curriculum for each subject that we're going to teach, or that I'm going to teach, and I plan out like what we'll do for each term. So I use a website called Ambleside Online as my to print my basic like schedule out. They have some filled in timetables or schedules that you can use. I more so use their blank one and then fill in what I'm going to use. So that's pretty much all I use it for. I do use what they schedule out for the Bible lessons. So we're a Christian family, so we do Bible lessons first thing in the morning. I don't count that as school. It's more so just that's part of our daily life as Christians. So my kids aren't like tested on it or graded on it or anything. I just include it on there so I know what we already read, because I'm very, very much like not type A at all. I could have I have like three different Bibles. Sometimes we'll read from this one, sometimes we'll read from the one in the kitchen, sometimes we'll read somewhere else. And so bookmarks are just, I don't know, things don't stay in order very well. So I do keep that listed so I know where we're at and what we've done. But as far as like school subjects go, I'm saying like a lot. As far as school subjects go, I kind of follow the basic outline that Ambleside had written in, but I do things slightly differently. So I start with our history. We use Story of the World for our history by Susan Wise Bauer. This is really like comprehensive world history. So the first book is Ancient Times, so it starts with kind of the oldest known civilizations, and then it like moves forward, sort of chronologically, of different ancient civilizations. So the great thing about this is it naturally covers different cultures and covers different geographies, different religions throughout. Of course, because it's ancient history, it's mostly in like Africa, Asia, and Europe, but actually pretty much all of it is up until the very last chapter. Uh, so I like that because we're getting good diversity in there. But anyway, that's on another track. I think I'll do videos for each subject that go more into detail. What I do at the beginning of the term, or actually the beginning of the year, is I'll look through the table of contents to find how many chapters there are. Like here, there's 41 chapters. We roughly do 36 weeks in our homeschool. I say roughly because it I don't follow everything rigidly, so sometimes we might go a couple extra days, or maybe we get ahead. We can take a couple days off. As long as in Nebraska, you just have to have a certain number of days or a certain number of hours. So as long as I get to that, that's all that matters. If I go over a little bit, that's fine. We might have to. So I'll break those 42 chapters into weeks. So some weeks we might only need to cover one chapter. Some weeks we might do two chapters. Um, Very rarely, but sometimes, if we get behind, we might try to do three chapters in a week. So I just go through that, and what I do is in my timetable. Sorry, this term one is like all smudged and spilled water on it, so I'll try to use term two. Is I'll put in like the chapters that I'm expecting us to be in week one. So like week one I might have chapters one and two, week two, three and four, week five, week three, five and six. And I just do that for the full. I could do it for the whole year. Honestly, I kind of do one term at a time. So maybe even I'll divide this by three and say, okay, so I need to get up to like chapter 16 or 17 or whatever. I don't remember even what it is by the end of the first term, and I'll just put in the chapters that way. So we have history, and then we go to science. I tried to start with a unit study this year, and it just wasn't my daughter's favorite. We talked about mammals. She loves animals, but I think just maybe my lesson planning wasn't very good. It just wasn't that great for her. So we went back to what we did last year. Last year I used Science in the Beginning by Dr. J. Weil, and my daughter loved it. There was an experiment for every lesson. So this year we went to the next book in that series, which is Science in the Ancient World. The great thing is that since it's Science in the Ancient World, you kind of get some things covered that were talked about in your history classes too. So same thing, I open the book, find how many weeks or how many lessons there are, and I just fill them in my week's time on my timetable. Now, after I get history and science chapters filled in, at some point I'll come back through and I'll look more closely through those chapters for each term. Like for term one, I'll look and see maybe what we're reading about in history. If we're reading about gladiators, then I'm going to go on our library and look at books that have gladiators in them or whatever. If we're reading about Rome, I might find something about Caesar or Cleopatra. If we're reading about Egypt, I'm going to look up maybe things about the Nile or pyramids, and I just try to find things that work within each of those civilizations. If I can find a children's picture book that works in those, then I will put the titles of those books in the boxes below. So there's a lot of empty spaces because sometimes I can't find books that fit whatever we're reading about in our history section, and sometimes I can. And I do that for science too. For example, this week in science we talked about atoms. So I found this book called I don't think I brought it in here, but I found a book at the library called Sisters in Science that's about Marie Curie and her sister, and it doesn't exactly follow the lesson that we did in science, but it kind of reinforces the importance of atoms and how learning about them has shaped science for us in the past and how that still affects us now in the future. So that's what I do for like extra or for learning within. We always do the subject itself and then books that reinforce what they've learned. Aside from science, something that's big in the Charlotte Mason field is like reading good books with like values or whatever. So they have they have Aesop's Fables listed as like a weekly thing. So every week would be Aesop's Fables. I kind of follow that. I have a book full of Aesop's Fables, so I did, rather than using the ones that the Charlotte Mason or the Ambleside Online says to use, I just look through the ones that I have, so that way my kids have an actual picture and book that we can read physically. Um, I'll just pick and put like the page number, but I do it every other week instead of every week. And then on the opposite weeks, we pick a fable or story from the African American read aloud stories. To me, I think it's really important to have diverse authors and diverse writing in what your kids are learning, in what my kids are learning anyway. That is not to say that I think, how do I want to say this? I'm not saying like if you only are using Aesop's fables, that's not like a bad thing, but it is from only a white perspective, and I think it's good to have things from other perspectives. For one thing, my kids are, I'm white, their dad, my husband is black, so it's like I feel like anything that they're learning, it should there should easily be almost a half and half influence between white and black perspectives, because that's the perspective they're growing up with, is a mother and father from both perspectives. Along with that, I also try to get books from other perspectives that we don't, that myself and my husband don't have. So especially when you're learning, like when we learn about Chinese culture, we're finding picture books. I try to find authors from those cultures as well, to for better accuracy. Of course, sometimes you might not have that, but at least having that representation on the pages of the books is very important. So that is that part of that kind of fits in with the literature part. And then we also do poetry weekly. Ambleside gives suggestions of poems you can use, or like books of poetry that you should use. I like to have books like in hand. Ambleside uses a lot of things that you can get for free online. I don't like printing a bunch of stuff, and I don't like reading off my phone or iPad. So I got this book at a thrift store. It was an old library book, and it's the poems are Neighborhood Odes by Gary Soto. I actually really love this because we also started learning Spanish this year. My kids did, and Gary Soto, his poems are in English, but he'll have like one or two, like a couple of Spanish words thrown in because of his his upbringing. He grew up in California, but many of his family members spoke Spanish, so he has that thrown in. So I like using him for. We just do a poem a day. We sometimes just talk about what do you think the poem was about, or what did it mean, and then I usually pick out whatever the Spanish word was in it and ask my kids, what do you think that meant? And if they have no idea, I'll read it again and say, okay, listen to the words around it. Can you guess what it might be about? And a lot of times my daughter can guess what it is. Sometimes she doesn't, and then we'll look it up and talk about it. So that's good. If you can find a poem book, I highly recommend Gary Soto. It's worked really well for us. Works for second grade. Uh, um, and then we also do a chapter book. Like, I'll pick a chapter book, or my daughter will pick a chapter book, and we read from the chapter book every day. Maybe one chapter. If she really likes it, we might read more. I intend on doing one chapter a day. Sometimes we read like way more than I wanted, but if she likes it, I'm not gonna stop her. And that's something we read aloud. My daughter can read on her own. She has things that she reads on her own, but I like to keep the read aloud in there. I think it's great for listening comprehension, and then plus I know exactly what she's paying attention to. I can ask her questions like, okay, what happened up until now? What happened last chapter? What do you think about this? What are your thoughts on these characters? And we talk about those things out loud, just in general. Next up is math. So most of these subjects we talked about are kind of weekly things, like science is 2 or 3 times a week, history is 2 or 3 times a week, Spanish did I say Spanish? Oh, poetry. Poetry we just do once a week. Literature literature is a couple times a week. Poetry is one of those things, and that's once a week. Fables happen once a week, but we alternate what type of fables they are. Oops, I hit my microphone. Okay. Daily is going to be math. Math, I think I forgot to bring that book in here. I use a Charlotte Mason elementary arithmetic for math, but same structure for putting it in here. I kind of look at how many lessons there are in the year, and I fill them in on where I think we should be each week. However, with math differs a lot from history and at this age science. I think eventually science will get to be more like how I do math. In math, I am not going to move on to the next lesson until I think my child has mastered the lesson that we've been talking about. So if we have a book and we're supposed to get through it in a year, but she is stuck on a lesson or like stuck on a concept, I'm not moving on to a concept that, because math is so much building on previous steps. If you move forward when they don't quite grasp this one, then they're going to struggle with it grasping the rest of the parts. So that's one of the beautiful things about homeschool is you can really make sure your kid grasps the stuff before moving on. And on another note, if they really do well with something or get it, you don't have to they don't have to stay back with the rest of the class. They can move forward faster if they are able to. So I do have my goals, I guess, of let's get from this page to this page, this page to this page each week. But I really just open the book and go from, okay, we did this lesson yesterday. We'll do the next day. We'll do this lesson. Sometimes I will break one lesson into two. We'll just do half of it the first day. If it's really a struggle, we'll stop halfway, and then the next day we'll do the rest of it. And if that was better, we move on. If that was a struggle, then we'll reinforce that lesson the next day. Math is every day, and then we do reading and writing every day. Like I said, we do the read aloud, but for my daughter, we do this. I use a phonics packet that I just got it I printed it. It was free from Under the Homeschool is a website. She create with another person created this this phonics program that works really well, I think. So just an example would be it focuses on a certain phonics concept. So the R with the sound, so backward, beggar, cedar, dollar, right? We say them like but they're spelled as R. So it focuses on a concept. So for she'll do at least one of those lessons every day. Sometimes we might do a second lesson if it was really short and easy, like this one was pretty short. And then I kind of combine spelling with this and with our other reading. So what I do is after she's practiced these words, I'll just give my daughter a whiteboard and I'll say, maybe I'll pick 3 or 4 words. This one only had 4 words, but sometimes there will be 10 or 20 words with that concept. But I'll just pick 4 or 5 words and have her spell them. And if she spells them all correctly, we don't add anything to our spelling list. If she had any trouble with them, then we'll add them to I'll have her write them in her notebook with the correct spelling and have her practice it. Maybe she'll practice writing them 3 times or whatever, and then on Friday I might do a little spelling test to see how she does. The other part of reading, we use these McGuffey readers, and they're just little short lessons. These are really, really old school books, but they start with some new vocabulary, and they're spelled out phonetically, and then it'll have either a poem or a story, some kind of excerpt from a passage, and that she'll read, and some of these vocabulary words will be in it. Same thing, I might have her practice spelling some of these words. If she spells them well, no spelling test. If she gets any of them wrong, we'll add it to like to a spelling list that she can practice and use. So that's how we do spelling. I just, if she already knows the word, she doesn't have to practice it. Another thing, sometimes I don't do this as much. Most of our spelling just comes from this and that phonics form, but with history and science, my I have we keep a I just my light. We keep like a little composition notebook that she can draw a picture. So like okay, she might here, she might draw a picture of what she learned, and then either she'll dictate a sentence that I write out, but most of the time I will have her write a sentence, or yeah, usually she'll write a sentence about one thing she learned from either the history or the science lesson, and she can draw a picture to go with it. So if that sentence has misspellings, I will mark those and I'll write the correct spelling for her at the bottom. And sometimes I'll add those to the spelling list, especially if she didn't have any problems with any of the other words. If she already has a full list, I won't add them, but I still put them in there and I have her copy it so she at least gets the practice of copying it the correct way. So that's, I guess, yeah, maybe I'll make videos that go more into detail of each subject, but we do the lessons from the book, but we use a lot of notebooking to remember, or to make sure I know that she's understanding what she's learned. Okay, so aside from writing, handwriting is, I used to have sheets where she would like trace the letters and stuff. Now that she knows all the letters, I just count handwriting as whatever writing she's doing. I check it and make sure it looks nice. Like if a sentence looks really bad, then I'll have her rewrite it with really nice writing. For foreign language, we are learning Spanish this year, and we use this book, Speaking Spanish, with Miss Mason and Francois, and I love it. It has really simple lessons. It focuses on phrases, so you're not necessarily learning all of the. You know how Spanish, there's, well, if you've learned Spanish, there's different verb forms. We don't do all of those like you don't learn a specific word and then all of the conjugations. You practice phrases that work together. So like the very first lesson is the very first lesson is I take the book, I open the book, I close the book. That's the whole lesson. You practice it in English, and then once the kids have it memorized in English, then they do the Spanish part, which is tomo el libro, abro el libro, cierro el libro, and you practice that until they've mastered that, and then you can add in things like notebook or wallet or other things that you take, open, and close. So you're using that word over and over, but you're just using like in the first lesson, you're just using the I take, I open. We're not using you, we, they, and the other forms of the verbs. And then the next lesson will progress to something else. You'll either add more phrases, or another lesson will add numbers, like I'll take a pencil, and then I take 2 pencils, I take 3 pencils, and then they just see, my bookmark just fell out. I'm always losing bookmarks and losing my spots, but that's what we do for Spanish. And then, like I said, it kind of gets reinforced with our poetry book. But the other thing we do for Spanish that I love is we watch a movie every Friday in Spanish, and usually we'll do the same movie multiple times. So my daughter loves the movie Encanto, so she already knows it almost by heart in English, so we'll watch it in Spanish and try to pay attention and think about or listen for words that she might recognize, and just get it. It gives her that listening for Spanish in the actual dialect, because obviously I can read a little bit of Spanish, but I don't know if my pronunciation's all that great. So this gives us that opportunity for her to hear it by actual Spanish speakers, and I think that's a lot better than me. Physical activity, PE is really important. We do it, it is required every day in the state of Nebraska. We do it, but I'm not. Hi. But we don't always do like a specific.